bullet that should have killed Junho Bae carved a path through the rain instead, missing his skull by the width of a breath. The International District's neon lights bled crimson across the rain-slicked alley where he was supposed to die. 6 men, 6 weapons, 0 escape routes. His security detail lay motionless in expanding pools of dark water and darker blood. He adjusted the cuffs of his ruined Armani suit with the same precision he'd used to build an empire, accepting the end with cold dignity. The tattoo of the Gumryong dragon showed through his torn white shirt, the ink seeming to writhe in the stuttering light of a dying street lamp. Then an e-bike's brakes screeched through the downpour, and everything changed. Nina Roberts skidded into the alley, her beat-up delivery bike spraying water across the concrete. 27 years old, black, athletic build hidden under a rain-soaked jacket, with reflective strips and a company logo that paid her in cash. Her box braids were pulled back tight, her face showing nothing but the exhausted irritation of someone working a double shift who'd just hit another dead end. The 6 assassins didn't even glance her way, just another piece of the city's background noise, street furniture with a pulse. "Wrong turn," one of them muttered in Korean, barely sparing her a look. They had no idea what they were looking at. Junho's eyes found hers for a fraction of a second, cold, calculating. Already resigned, the look of a man who'd stopped asking for mercy years ago. The lead assassin, a man built like an industrial freezer with a neck tattoo that marked him as Sangyong Crew, gestured with his gun. "Move along, sweetheart. This doesn't concern you." Nina said nothing. Her amber-brown eyes swept the scene with a precision that would have warned anyone actually paying attention. Weapons positions, escape routes, blind spots. The way Junho favored his left side suggested a rib injury. The blood pattern on his collar was arterial spray, but not his. One of the men, annoyed by her presence, stepped forward and kicked her bike. Hard. The delivery bag hit the wet asphalt with a sound like a body falling. Everything stopped. Nina didn't scream, didn't flinch. She just sighed. A long, exhausted exhale that seemed to carry 14 months of trying to be someone else. Then she turned to look at the man who'd kicked her bike, and her eyes shifted from tired worker to something ancient and absolutely empty. The first man didn't even see her move. One moment he was smirking, thinking he'd scared off an unlucky civilian. The next, Nina's boot was arcing through the rain-thick air in a perfect axe kick that came down on the junction of his neck and shoulder with surgical precision. The crack of his clavicle breaking echoed off the brick walls. He crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. The alley fell into a silence so complete that Junho could hear the hiss of rain hitting hot pavement. 5 assassins stared at their partner lying motionless at the feet of the woman in the delivery jacket. The contempt in their eyes flickered into something that looked a lot like fear. "Kill her," the leader barked. "Kill her first." 3 of them rushed Nina while 2 stayed focused on Junho, professional enough not to forget their primary target. Nina had no weapon, no armor, only muscle memory she'd spent over a year trying to forget. The first attacker swung a collapsible baton. She moved like water, redirecting his momentum and using his own weight to drive his face into the brick wall. His nose shattered with a wet crunch. The second pulled a knife, the blade catching the neon light as it slashed toward her throat. She leaned back, the edge passing close enough to part the rain in front of her face, then pivoted and drove her heel into his kneecap. The joint bent backward with a sound like green wood snapping. The third hung back, eyes narrowing as he reassessed. He was smarter, more careful. On the other side of the alley, Junho fought like a man raised in violence from childhood. Even bleeding, even exhausted, the dragon head moved with lethal grace. He blocked a punch, answered with an elbow that shattered teeth, slipped away from a knife thrust that would have opened his kidney. But he was slowing, blood from a gash above his eye mixed with rain, blurring his vision. "Who are you?" he shouted over the sound of rain in combat. Nina grabbed a broken bottle from the refuse scattered in the alley, driving the jagged edge into the third attacker's thigh without hesitation. "Someone who should have kept riding," she shot back. 4 men down, 2 remaining. The leader didn't panic. He pulled a Glock from inside his jacket, but he didn't aim it at Junho. He aimed it straight at Nina's center mass. "Should have minded your own business," he said, finger tightening on the trigger. Nina saw the barrel's dark eye, saw the finger contracting, saw death approaching at 900 feet per second. She couldn't dodge, couldn't run. The math was simple and absolute. Then Junho Bei threw himself between them. The gunshot split the night like thunder. The bullet tore through Junho's left shoulder, the impact spinning him. Blood sprayed across Nina's jacket in a pattern like scattered roses. He staggered but stayed on his feet, his gray eyes finding hers with an expression she couldn't name. Something between fury and wonder. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The leader checked his watch, then signaled his remaining partner. Fall back, now. They vanished into the maze of alleys as quickly as they'd appeared. But before he disappeared completely, the leader turned back. This is just the beginning, Bei. The Gyeomryong will fall, and everyone who stands with you. Then he was gone, swallowed by darkness and rain. Nina caught Junho as his legs buckled, her hands pressing against the wound, pouring blood that felt hot against her cold fingers. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Her voice cracked despite herself. You don't even know who I am. Junho looked at her, his face pale from blood loss but his eyes still sharp as broken glass. Maybe I'm tired, he whispered, of watching people die because of me. The roar of an engine cut through the rain. A black SUV with tinted windows screeched to a halt at the alley's mouth. 4 men poured out, weapons drawn, moving with military precision. The one in front had sharp Korean features and eyes like flint. Dylan Cole, former Navy SEAL, Junho's right hand and the most loyal man in the Gyeomryong family. He took in the scene with a single sweep. The unconscious bodies, the blood, the weapons, and the woman in a delivery jacket with her hands covered in his boss's blood. His gun came up, aimed directly at Nina's head. Step away from him. Right now. Junho tried to speak through the pain. Dylan, stand down. She saved. Sir, with respect, shut up. Dylan's voice was ice over steel. You. He focused on Nina. Who are you? And why are 4 Sangyong enforcers unconscious in this alley? Nina's hands were still pressed against Junho's shoulder, feeling his pulse against her palms. The delivery bag lay forgotten in the rain beside them, its contents scattered. Something inside the bag was making a sound. A soft, electronic beeping that was getting faster. Her blood went cold. Everyone needs to run, she said quietly. Right now. I asked you a question, Dylan said. The delivery wasn't food. Nina looked up at him, and Dylan saw something in her eyes that made his finger hesitate on the trigger. It was a bomb. The beeping accelerated. Nina grabbed the bag and hurled it toward the alley's dead end with everything she had. It sailed through the rain, hit the far wall, and the explosion turned night into day. The shockwave slammed them all against the opposite wall, the sound so loud it seemed to come from inside Nina's skull. Brick and mortar rained down. Car alarms screamed. Fire licked up the walls where the bag had landed, hungry and bright. In the aftermath, ears ringing, lungs burning with smoke and cordite, Dylan stared at the woman who'd just saved all their lives. Last chance, he said. Who are you? Nina looked down at Junho Bei, the man who'd taken a bullet for her, the man whose organization had unknowingly funded the program that had turned her into a weapon, the man she'd spared 5 years ago without him knowing it was her. For the first time in 14 months of running, hiding, pretending to be someone normal, Nina Roberts didn't have a simple answer. Hello again to my thrill seekers and hopeless romantics. If you're ready to get your heart racing, make sure you're subscribed, hit like to claim your seat, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. It's amazing to see us all connected by the same craving for a good story. Every interaction from you helps us grow and keep the drama coming, day after day. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let the rest of the world fade away. Let's dive in. The question followed Nina into the fluorescent brightness of Harborview Medical Center's private wing, where armed men stood outside her door, and the man she'd saved slept down the hall with a bullet hole she'd caused him to take. They didn't keep her long. 3 hours of a doctor stitching a gash on her forearm she hadn't noticed getting. A police detective asking questions she answered with practiced vagueness. And then they released her into the pre-dawn gray of a Seattle morning that smelled like rain and exhaust. Nina didn't go home immediately. She took 3 different buses, doubled back twice, watched reflections in store windows for tales. Old habits. The kind that kept you breathing when breathing wasn't guaranteed. Her apartment was in the Rainier Valley, 4th floor of a building where the elevator worked maybe half the time, and the superintendent accepted cash and didn't ask questions. It wasn't much. A studio with water-stained ceiling tiles, a kitchenette with 2 working burners, a mattress on the floor, and a window that overlooked a pawn shop and a check-cashing place. But it was hers. Or it had been, for 14 months. Long enough to almost forget what it felt like to sleep with a gun under the pillow. She unlocked the door and knew immediately. Someone was inside. It wasn't a sound, not a scent. It was something deeper, visceral. A crawling sensation along the base of her skull that she'd learned to trust more than her own eyes. The aviary had called it threat perception. Nina called it survival. She left the door open, escape route. Her hand went to the knife sheathed at the small of her back, hidden under the delivery jacket she still wore. "You can put the blade away," a voice said from the darkness. Male, accented, Korean. "I'm not here to hurt you." Nina didn't put the knife away. She stepped inside, letting her eyes adjust. The man sat in her single armchair like it was a throne. Junho Bae, no longer bleeding, no longer pale. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. His left arm was in a black silk sling embroidered with silver thread worth more than 3 months of her rent. "How did you find me?" Her voice was flat, dead. "The bike." He gestured to the corner where her e-bike leaned against the wall. "The company requires GPS trackers. I own the company." Nina's jaw tightened. The delivery service she'd chosen specifically because it paid in cash, asked for minimal ID, didn't do background checks. She should have known nothing was ever really off the grid. "You need to leave." "I will." Junho didn't move. "After you hear what I have to say, I don't owe you anything. Actually, you do." He pulled a tablet from beside the chair, tapped the screen, and turned it to face her. "You left a fingerprint on the collapsible baton. The one held by the man whose clavicle you shattered." Nina's blood went cold. The image on the screen was a forensic report. Her partial print, clear as day, next to a database match that should not have existed because Nina Roberts was a ghost, a name chosen at random, a social security number she'd bought in a Portland bus station. But the match wasn't to Nina Roberts. It was to Subject 7. "Seattle PD runs every print through federal databases," Junho said quietly. "The FBI has an alert on this particular print. So does the Department of Defense. So does an agency that officially doesn't exist but has a budget larger than most countries. The aviary." "I scrubbed the report," he continued. "It never reached the federal servers. As far as anyone knows, that print belongs to a delivery driver with no priors who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time." Nina stared at him. At the man she'd saved. The man who now held her entire life in his perfectly manicured hands. "Why?" "Because I'm curious." Junho set the tablet down. 4 men. 6 seconds. You moved like death had a timetable. I've seen soldiers, assassins, special forces operators. You're something else. I'm nobody. You're a lie." His gray eyes pinned her. A very well-constructed lie. "But I'm good at finding truth." Nina felt the walls closing in. The apartment that had been sanctuary for 14 months suddenly felt like a cage. She could kill him. She'd killed men for less. Her fingers tightened on the knife handle. "You're calculating," Junho observed, still not moving. "Threat assessment, distance, angles. You're wondering if you can reach me before I trigger the dead man's switch on my phone that will send your real file to every intelligence agency in the Western Hemisphere." He wasn't bluffing. She could feel it. The cool certainty radiating from him like winter frost. "What do you want?" "You saw the attack tonight. 6 men, professional, coordinated." Junho leaned forward, and pain flickered across his face before he controlled it. "Someone inside my organization is selling me out. I don't know who. I don't know how high it goes. I need someone I can trust." "You don't trust me." "No." His smile was cold. "But I own you. That's better than trust." The words hit like a slap. Nina wanted to argue, to fight, to tell him he owned nothing, but they both knew the truth. She'd spent 14 months running from the aviary, living on cash and fear, one step ahead of a government that considered her property. What's the offer? Work for me, personal security, my shadow. Junho stood slowly, favoring his injured shoulder. The war is coming. I have enemies on every side. Someone tried to kill me tonight and nearly succeeded. I need someone who can see what my own people can't. And after the war, I delete the file, permanently. You disappear. I never contact you again. Nina studied him. 6 feet of tailored menace and cold calculation. The dragonhead of Gyum Ryong. A man who'd taken a bullet for her without knowing her name. There's something else, she said. Something you're not telling me. Junho's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. You're right. He moved toward the door, slow and deliberate, like a predator that didn't fear being attacked from behind. But you'll figure it out soon enough. You seem good at solving puzzles. He paused at the threshold, looking back at her. In the yellow light from the hallway, his face looked carved from stone. My driver will pick you up at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Dress appropriately. We're going to a place where blood and money meet. Then he was gone, leaving Nina alone with the fingerprint that had damned her and the choice that wasn't a choice at all. She locked the door, secured the chain, then went to the laptop hidden under the loose floorboard. Military-grade encryption, Tor routing, the kind of paranoia that had kept her alive. She typed, Gyum Ryong Syndicate, Junho Bay. The first hits were what she expected. Organized crime, suspected trafficking, money laundering through legitimate businesses across the Pacific Northwest. Then she found the financial disclosures. Public records from a shell corporation buried 6 layers deep. Gyum Ryong Enterprises had been the primary investor in a Department of Defense black budget program 10 years ago, Project Aviary. Nina's hands shook as she scrolled through the documents. The program that had taken children, broken them, rebuilt them into weapons. The program that had stolen her name, her past, her humanity, and replaced it with tactical protocols and the ability to feel other people's intent to kill. Junho Bay's money had paid for that. His syndicate had funded the torture that made her, and now he owned her all over again. Nina closed the laptop, went to the window, and watched the sun rise over a city that would never feel safe again. The delivery jacket hung over the chair. She'd worn it like armor, like proof she was normal, human, but the blood dried into the fabric told a different story. She'd saved the devil. And now she belonged to him. The car that arrived at 6 p.m. wasn't a car. It was a statement. A midnight blue Bentley Continental GT with windows tinted dark enough to hide sins. The driver was a woman, late 30s, Korean, with a scar bisecting her left eyebrow and eyes that had seen things Nina recognized. Miss Roberts. She opened the rear door. Mr. Bay is waiting. Nina slid into leather that smelled like money and violence. The woman who'd saved for 14 months to afford a black market passport now sat in a vehicle worth more than most houses, wearing clothes she hadn't bought. They'd arrived at her apartment at 4 p.m. 3 women, no names, carrying garment bags and makeup cases like they were tactical equipment. They'd stripped her down with clinical efficiency, ignoring her scars, measuring her like she was a mannequin. Now she wore a tailored suit in charcoal gray that matched the color of smoke, cut to emphasize her athletic build while concealing the weapons she'd been told she could carry. The jacket was lined with a material that would stop a blade. The pants had pockets deep enough for spare magazines. Someone had understood the assignment. They'd done her makeup too, minimal, professional. They'd left her box braids alone, which she appreciated, but added small silver cuffs that caught the light. Nina looked like she belonged in Junho Bay's world. She hated how good it felt. The Bentley glided through Seattle's evening traffic, heading south toward the industrial district. The driver said nothing. Nina watched the city pass, committing routes to memory, noting cameras, counting blocks to the nearest transit station. Old habits. They stopped in front of a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside. Graffiti-tagged walls, broken windows, chain-link fence. But when the Bentley pulled into the alley, a section of the fence rolled aside automatically. hydraulics, security cameras everywhere. The building's interior was a different world. Polished concrete floors, exposed steel beams painted matte black, indirect lighting that cast everything in amber and shadow, luxury carved out of industrial bone. The driver led her through a hallway to a private elevator. They descended. 2 floors, maybe 3. When the doors opened, sound hit her like a physical force. The underground gambling den was chaos-given architecture. 100 people minimum, maybe more, packed into a space designed to feel both exclusive and infinite. Roulette tables, poker games with chips that looked like they represented house mortgages, a bar that gleamed like an altar. Everything smoke and whiskey and the electric charge of money changing hands. Nina's skin prickled. Too many people. Too much noise. She forced herself to breathe through it, to push down the sensation of 100 different heartbeats pressing against her awareness like hands. You feel it. The voice came from directly behind her, too close. Nina's hand went to her hip before she could stop herself. Junho Bei stood there, immaculate in a 3-piece suit the color of midnight, his left arm tucked stiffly against his side, favoring the injury. He looked like he'd been carved from the same expensive darkness as the room around them. Feel what? Nina's voice was tight. The crowd. The pressure. His eyes were too knowing. It's written all over your face. Nina said nothing. She hadn't survived this long by confirming suspicions. Junho moved past her, heading into the chaos. She followed because that was the job. His shadow. Close enough to intervene, far enough to scan for threats. The crowd parted for him. Not obviously. Not with fear. But space opened nevertheless. Recognition rippling through the room like a stone dropped in still water. The dragonhead was here. They moved through the tables to a private section cordoned off with velvet rope and 2 men built like industrial freezers. Junho nodded and they stepped aside. Inside was a room within a room. Leather booth. Private bar. A window overlooking the main floor that was clearly one-way glass. Sit. Junho gestured to the booth. I'm working. Sit anyway. You're attracting attention standing there like a Secret Service agent. Nina slid into the booth, positioning herself where she could see both exits. Junho sat across from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive, cedar and smoke. A waitress appeared, young, nervous. She set down 2 glasses of whiskey, neat, then retreated. I don't drink on the job, Nina said. It's not a suggestion. Junho pushed 1 glass toward her. Everyone here knows my face. They need to think you're a date, not a bodyguard. Drink. Nina picked up the glass, brought it to her lips, didn't swallow. Old bartender trick. Make it look real. Junho smiled. He'd noticed. You don't trust anyone, he said. I wonder why. They sat in silence for a moment. On the floor below, someone won big at roulette. Cheers erupted. Nina catalogued faces, exits, weapons. The 2 guards at the door both carried cigs. The bartender kept his hand near the register in a way that suggested there was a weapon taped underneath. Why am I really here? Nina asked. Because I want them to see you. Junho leaned back. His posture relaxed in a way that was somehow more threatening than tension. The people who tried to kill me are in this room. Somewhere. Watching. Nina's pulse quickened. You're using me as bait. I'm using us both as bait. His smile was sharp. If they think I'm distracted by a beautiful woman, they'll make a move, and when they do, I need you to see it coming. The casual mention of her beauty slid under Nina's defenses before she could block it. She hated that it affected her. Hated that some small, buried part of her that wasn't. Subject 7 responded to the heat in his eyes. Someone's coming, Nina said quietly. Junho didn't turn. Who? 3 men. Asian. Expensive suits. The one in front has a knife scar on his right hand. They're trying to look casual, but their heartbeat is elevated. How do you know their heartbeat is elevated? Nina didn't answer. She couldn't. The 3 men approached the velvet rope. The lead man bowed slightly to Junho. Dragonhead. We heard about last night. Terrible business. Terrible, Junho agreed, his tone flat. If there's anything the Sung-young family can do. There isn't. Junho's dismissal was absolute. The man's jaw tightened. He glanced at Nina, calculating. New acquisition? Old friend. Junho's hand moved across the table, covering Nina's. The touch was electric, possessive. And not your concern. The men left. But Nina felt their malice linger in the air like cigarette smoke. They're going to try something tonight, she said. I know. Junho's hand remained on hers, warm and solid. Stay close. The night progressed. More visitors. More veiled threats disguised as concern. Nina watched them all, reading the micro-expressions, the elevated heart rates, the intention that pressed against her awareness like storm pressure. Around 11, a waitress approached their booth. Different from the earlier one. Older. She carried a bottle of premium whiskey on a silver tray. Compliments of Mr. Lee, she said, setting it down. Nina grabbed Junho's wrist before he could reach for the bottle. Don't. The waitress's eyes went wide. Guilty. Leave, Nina told her. The woman fled. Junho looked at the bottle, then at Nina. Poisoned? Or drugged? Her intention felt wrong, like broken glass. Her intention felt wrong, Junho repeated slowly. What are you? Before Nina could answer, the waitress from earlier appeared, the nervous young one. She had a drink tray and was heading toward their booth, but she stumbled. The tray tilted. A full glass of dark liquid splashed across Junho's shirt and jacket. I'm so sorry. The girl looked mortified. I'm so sorry, sir. Junho stood, liquid dripping from his clothes. His expression was unreadable. It's fine. I'll change. He looked at Nina. Clear the room. Nina followed him through a door behind the bar into a private hallway. More doors, each marked with discreet plaques. Storage, office, private. Junho opened the door, marked private. Inside was a bedroom, actual bedroom. King bed with black silk sheets, private bathroom, a closet. You keep a bedroom in your gambling den, Nina said. I keep a bedroom in most of my properties. Wait here. He disappeared into the bathroom. Nina swept the room. No hidden compartments. No obvious surveillance. She checked the closet. Suits. Shoes. Everything precisely organized. The bathroom door opened. Junho emerged shirtless. Nina stopped breathing. She'd seen men without shirts before. She'd killed men without shirts. But this was different. He was different. The tattoo on his chest was fully visible now. A dragon, black and gray, coiling from his collarbone down across his ribs, breathing fire that seemed to lick at his sternum. Beautiful and terrible. But it was the scar that made her freeze. A jagged line, pale against his skin, running from just below his left clavicle down to his ribcage. Surgical precision. The kind of cut made by someone who knew exactly where to strike to disable without killing. 5 years ago, a rising target, a little girl who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nina had given him that scar. You're staring. Junho's voice pulled her back to the present. The scar, Nina managed. What happened? Junho looked down at it, his expression distant. 5 years ago, an assassination attempt. My first, actually. I was careless, stupid. I had my niece with me, taking her to dinner. The assassin could have killed me, had me dead to rights. He touched the scar, tracing it, but they didn't. They cut me deep enough to mark me, to warn me, and then they vanished. I've never known why they let me live. Nina's mouth was dry. She could remember that night with crystalline clarity. The weight of the blade, the way his body had moved to shield the child. The decision she'd made in a fraction of a second that had haunted her for years. Maybe they weren't as good as they thought, she said carefully. No. Junho pulled a fresh shirt from the closet. White, crisp. They were perfect. That's what scared me. Someone that skilled choosing not to kill me meant I owed them a life. I've been looking for them ever since. He slid the shirt on, began buttoning it. Nina watched his fingers work, elegant and precise. Why? She asked. Because I want to know what they saw in me that was worth saving. He fastened the last button, looked at her. Or if they regret their choice. The air between them was charged, dangerous. Nina felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice. "We should get back," she said. Junho stepped closer. Not threatening, but deliberate. Until there were inches between them, and she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "You know something," he said quietly. "About the attack. About tonight. About me. I can see it in your eyes. You don't know what you see. I know enough." His hand came up, not touching her, just hovering near her face. "You're terrified of me. But not because you think I'll hurt you. You're terrified because you know exactly what I'm capable of. Because you recognize it." Nina's pulse hammered. She could kill him, right now. End this before it became something she couldn't control. But she didn't. "We should get back," she repeated. Junho smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who'd just confirmed a suspicion. "Yes," he said. "We should." They returned to the booth. The night continued. But everything had changed. Nina could feel Junho's awareness on her skin like heat. Could sense his curiosity like a predator circling prey. He knew she was lying. He just didn't know about what. Not yet. The corporate gala was held at the Columbia Tower, 46th floor, with views that stretched from the Puget Sound to the Cascade Mountains. Glass and steel and money. So much money you could smell it in the air conditioning. Nina hated it immediately. The invitation had come 3 days after the gambling den. Junho needed to make an appearance at a charity event. Something about funding arts programs for underprivileged youth. The irony of a crime lord donating to children's causes wasn't lost on Nina. But she'd learned quickly that Junho's public face was immaculate. Philanthropist. Entrepreneur. The kind of man who got profiled in Seattle magazine. She'd been outfitted again, this time a dress. Black, floor-length, with a slit up the left thigh high enough to access the ceramic blade knife strapped there. The fabric was some kind of technical material that looked like silk, but would stop a blade. Expensive and deadly, like everything in Junho's world. Her braids were styled up, exposing the column of her throat. Diamond earrings that were probably real. Heels that added 3 inches, and doubled as weapons if necessary. Nina looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The Bentley picked her up at 7. Junho was already inside, wearing a tuxedo that made him look like sin in Italian wool. He took her in with a single glance that felt like touch. "You clean up well," he said. "So do you." They arrived fashionably late. The elevator ride was silent, but Nina felt the pressure building with each floor. By the time they reached the 46th, her hands were shaking. "You're nervous," Junho observed. "I'm fine." "You're lying." The elevator doors opened onto a wall of sound and bodies. 200 people minimum, packed into a space designed for elegant circulation. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, waiters with champagne trays threading through the crowd. Nina stepped out, and the world tilted. It hit her all at once. The collective weight of 200 heartbeats, 200 intentions, 200 nervous systems firing anxiety and boredom and hunger and lust and aggression, all bleeding together into a cacophony that wasn't sound but something deeper. Sensation. Empathy forced through her nerve endings like voltage. She'd felt this before. In crowds. In training. Before she'd broken, her breath came short. Sweat beaded at her temples despite the air conditioning. "Nina," Junho's voice was sharp. "What's wrong?" "Too many people." The words came out strangled. Junho's hand found the small of her back. Firm. Grounding. "Stay with me." He guided her through the crowd, but every person they passed was another frequency added to the static. A businessman mentally calculating a hostile takeover. A socialite burning with envy at another woman's jewelry. A waiter radiating exhaustion and resentment. Nina felt all of it. By the time they reached the bar, she was trembling. Junho ordered 2 drinks she didn't register, then steered her toward the balcony. The night air was cold and clean. Nina gulped it down, trying to clear her head. "Talk to me," Junho said. "I can't do this." "Why?" Nina looked at him. At this man who'd blackmailed her into service, who owned her freedom, who she'd almost killed 5 years ago. and she was so tired of lying. "I feel them," she said quietly. "All of them. Their fear, their anger, their intention. It's like static in my head. Too much input, too much noise." Junho was silent for a long moment. The balcony was private, glass enclosed, separated from the main floor. Seattle glittered below them, indifferent and vast. "How long have you had this?" he asked finally. "Always, since I was a child. But they made it worse. The program, they enhanced it, weaponized it." Nina's laugh was bitter. "I can feel when someone wants to kill me. Feel it the same way you feel temperature. It made me very good at what I did, until it broke me." "The aviary," Junho said. Nina's head snapped up. "How do you—" "I've been researching you, or trying to. Subject 7, that's what they called you." He moved closer, his body blocking the view of the party inside. "I found the funding trail 3 days ago. My syndicate bankrolled that program. My father's money. Before I took over." "I know." Nina's voice was cold. "I found it too. Does it change anything? Between us?" "It changes everything. You paid for them to destroy me. I didn't know." For the first time, Junho's control cracked. Something raw showed through. "My father made deals I'm still uncovering. But you're right. That blood is on my family's hands." Nina wanted to hate him. Should have hated him. But standing there, feeling his genuine remorse pressing against her senses like a physical ache, she couldn't. "The crowd," she said. "I need to get out of here." "We will. Soon. But first." Junho reached up, his hand cupping her face. The touch was gentle, unexpected. "Close your eyes." "What?" "Trust me. Just for a moment." Nina closed her eyes. Immediately, the noise intensified. She started to pull away, but Junho's other hand came to rest on her shoulder, anchoring her. "Now focus on me," he said quietly. "Just me. My heartbeat. My intention. Block out everything else." It shouldn't have worked. But his presence was different. Not empty, but still. Like deep water. His intention wasn't aggressive or fearful or calculating. It was focused, singular. Fixed on her with an intensity that cut through the static. Nina focused on that stillness. Let it become a shield. Slowly, the noise receded. Not gone, but manageable. She could breathe. "Better?" Junho's voice was close to her ear. "Better." Nina opened her eyes. He was closer than before, his face inches from hers. In the low light, his eyes looked almost black. "You feel too much," he whispered. "And I feel nothing. The program they built you for was designed to make super soldiers who could predict attacks. My father's business has made me numb to violence. We're both monsters, Nina. Just different kinds. I'm not a monster. Yes, you are. So am I. But maybe," his thumb brushed across her cheekbone, "maybe monsters are what each other needs to survive." The moment stretched. Nina felt her defenses crumbling, felt something dangerous and unwanted blooming in her chest. Want. Not the kind the program had burned out of her, but something deeper, the desire to be seen, to be known. Junho leaned closer. The balcony door burst open. A man stumbled out, drunk, laughing, trailing a woman in a red dress. They saw Junho and Nina, froze, then retreated with slurred apologies. The spell broke. Nina stepped back, putting space between them. "Professional distance. We should make an appearance. Show your face." Junho's expression was unreadable. "Of course." They returned to the party. Nina's shields were stronger now, the technique Junho had shown her helping to filter the noise. She could function. They made the rounds. Junho introduced her as his associate. Vague enough to mean anything. People assumed what they wanted. Girlfriend, mistress, bodyguard. Nina let them assume. Around midnight, they found themselves in a conversation circle with tech executives and city council members. Polite talk about development projects and tax incentives. Nina stood slightly behind Junho, scanning faces, reading intentions. One man was different. City councilman, according to his name tag. He kept glancing at Junho with something that felt like fear masked in friendliness. Nina leaned close to Junho's ear. "The councilman. 3 o'clock. He's terrified of you but pretending otherwise." Junho didn't react outwardly. He continued his conversation about waterfront development. But later, when they'd moved to another group, he murmured, "The councilman owes me money. 2 million. Gambling debts. He's been avoiding collection." "He's planning to run," Nina said. "I can feel it. He's already mentally packing bags." "Good to know." They left at 1 a.m. The ride back was quiet. Nina's head throbbed from the sensory overload, but it was manageable. She leaned back against the leather, eyes closed. "You did well tonight," Junho said. "I survived. That's all any of us do." The Bentley dropped Nina at her apartment. Junho didn't get out, but before she closed the door, he caught her wrist. "What you told me tonight," he said, "about feeling people's intentions. I need you to know. My intention toward you is complicated. I want to use you, to keep you close because you're useful. But I also," he paused, choosing words, "I also want to keep you close because you're the first person in years who looks at me and sees the monster without flinching." Nina pulled her wrist free gently. "That's because I'm a monster too." "Exactly." She left him in the car and went upstairs. In her apartment, she stripped off the expensive dress, the weapons, the armor, stood in the shower until the water ran cold. When she finally slept, she dreamed of ballrooms full of screaming static and a man with gray eyes who stood at the center of the chaos like the eye of a hurricane, still, focused, fixed on her. And for the first time in 5 years, Nina wasn't sure if she was the hunter or the hunted. The call came at 3 a.m. Nina woke with her hand already on the gun under her pillow, breath caught, heart hammering. The phone buzzed again. Junho's number. "What?" she answered. "We have a problem. I'm sending a car." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, Nina was in the back of an SUV, heading toward the port of Seattle. The driver was Dylan, Junho's right hand. The former SEAL with eyes like flint. He hadn't said a word since picking her up. "What's the problem?" Nina asked. "You'll see." They drove to the industrial docks, a maze of shipping containers and cranes that looked like sleeping giants in the dark. The SUV stopped beside a warehouse lit from within by harsh work lights. Nina followed Dylan inside. The warehouse was enormous, but most of it was empty. In the center, under the lights, sat 3 shipping containers. Their doors were open. Junho stood in front of them wearing jeans and a black sweater, looking less like a crime lord and more like a very dangerous college professor. Around him, 6 men in tactical gear held positions, weapons ready, scanning for threats. "Show her," Junho said to Dylan. Dylan led Nina to the first container. Inside were crates, standard. He pried one open with a crowbar. Nina looked inside and her blood turned to ice. Not drugs, not weapons, vials, hundreds of them. Each filled with liquid the color of deep ocean water, blue, luminescent in the work lights. She knew what it was before Dylan said it. "Compound V7, he confirmed. "Same shit the DoD used in Black Ops programs. Super soldier serum." Nina's hands started shaking. She balled them into fists. "Where did this come from?" "Intercepted shipment," Junho said, moving to stand beside her. "It was supposed to go to Sangyong, the rival family, but my people got to it first." Nina stared at the vials. Each one represented a child taken, a life destroyed, a weapon created. She'd been injected with this, compound V7, for months, until her body metabolized it, until her nervous system rewired itself to feel the electrical impulses of other humans. "Why would Sangyong want this?" Nina asked, her voice hollow. "That's what we're trying to figure out." Dylan crossed his arms. "No street value, no recreational use. This is military-grade biotech. Someone's restarting the program," Nina said. The realization hit like cold water. The aviary. They're using the syndicates to traffic the compound so it can't be traced back to the government. Junho's expression darkened. "You're certain? This doesn't end up in criminal hands by accident." Someone inside your organization is facilitating this. Who? Nina closed her eyes. Let her awareness expand. The 6 armed men. Dylan. Junho. She felt their intentions like radar pings. The armed men. Alert. Focused. Loyal. Dylan. Suspicious. Protective of Junho. Deeply uncertain about Nina. Junho. Anger. Betrayal. Something else underneath that felt like determination. Not here, Nina said. Whoever it is isn't here. We have a suspect, Dylan said. Lieutenant Park. He's been making unauthorized trips to the docks. Private conversations. Bank account shows deposits that don't match his salary. Bring him in, Junho ordered. They moved to a different section of the warehouse. Someone had set up a makeshift interrogation room. Metal chair bolted to the floor. Work light. Very civilized. 20 minutes later, they brought in Lieutenant Park. Late 40s, Korean. Built like a bulldog. 2 guards held him between them. Dragonhead, Park said, his voice tight. I can explain. Explain, Junho said coldly. They sat Park in the chair. Dylan asked the questions while Junho watched. Nina stood in the shadows, focusing on Park's emotional state. Fear. Genuine, bowel-loosening terror, but not guilt. I don't know anything about the shipment, Park insisted. I've been meeting someone, yes, but it's not what you think. Then what is it? Dylan leaned in, threatening. Park's eyes went to Nina, then back to Junho. I've been meeting with a woman, my daughter, from a previous relationship. She's in debt. I've been helping her. The deposits are from selling personal items to raise cash. Dylan pulled out photos. Park meeting with a young woman at coffee shops. Parks. Always public. Always daylight. Nina felt the man's shame. His fear of disappointing Junho. His desperation to protect his daughter. But not betrayal. He's not lying, Nina said from the shadows. All eyes turned to her. How do you know? Dylan demanded. Nina stepped into the light. Looked at Park. You're ashamed. Embarrassed. Terrified. But you're not guilty of trafficking. Park's expression crumpled. I swear on my life, Dragonhead. I would never. I believe you, Junho said quietly. Dylan straightened. Sir, with respect. Release him. Junho's tone left no room for argument. They uncuffed Park. He bowed deeply, retreated. When he was gone, Dylan turned to Nina. How did you know? Experience. Junho studied her. If not Park, then who? Nina didn't want to say it. Didn't want to voice the suspicion that had been building since she'd felt the first ripple of betrayal in the warehouse. I need to feel everyone close to you, she said finally. Your inner circle. One by one. Over the next 3 hours, they brought them in. Lieutenants, advisors, accountants. Each person sat across from Nina while she read them. Loyal, loyal, loyal. Greedy but loyal. Afraid but loyal. Then they brought in Min-sok, the uncle, Junho's father figure, the man who'd raised him after his parents died. Late 60s, elegant in the way of old criminals who'd survived long enough to become legends. Nina felt it the moment he walked in. Betrayal. Deep and acidic. Not the surface kind, but fundamental. The kind that had calcified into purpose. Uncle, Junho greeted him warmly. Thank you for coming. Of course, nephew. Anything for the family. The words were right. The tone was right. But Nina felt the lie underneath like a blade. She caught Junho's eye. Shook her head minutely. Junho's expression didn't change. He continued the conversation, asking about routine family business. But Nina saw his posture shift, saw him processing the betrayal. When Min-sok left, Junho stood silent for a long moment. You're certain, he said finally. Yes, he raised me. Taught me everything. I know. Junho's hands clenched. Why? Nina had spent the last hour thinking about it, feeling the edges of Min-sok's hatred, and she'd realized something. Your father, she said carefully. What do you know about how he died? Junho turned to her. Car accident. 15 years ago. Are you certain? Dylan, who'd been silent, spoke up. There were always rumors. Some people said he was a rat, working with the feds. Junho's face went hard. Those were lies. Rival families spreading rumors. Were they? Nina asked gently. Because your uncle's hatred feels personal, deep, like he's been waiting years for revenge. The alley attack, Nina realized aloud, the pieces finally clicking into place. The hit squad was Sang-yong, but the bomb in my bag. The delivery order came from a shell company linked to your uncle. He sent a bomb and a hit team. He wanted to make absolutely sure you didn't walk out of that alley. But he failed, Junho said. So he waited. He was waiting for the V7. Nina realized. He couldn't sell you out to the aviary until he had the serum they wanted. That's why he's been quiet for 3 weeks. He was securing the payload. The truth settled over them like fallout. If Junho's father had been an informant, then Min-sok would see the entire bloodline as tainted, corrupted, something to be purged. He's selling me to the aviary, Nina said, trading my location for… What? Legitimacy? A new syndicate purged of your father's legacy? Junho grabbed his phone. I'm calling him. Setting a meeting. We end this. Nina caught his wrist. He'll know you know. He'll run or go to ground. Then what do you suggest? Nina thought about it. About the compound. About the aviary. About Min-sok's patient, calculated hatred. He's planning something bigger than just selling me out, she said. The compound, the trafficking, it's all connected. We need to let him think he's winning. Let him make his move. And then? Nina's smile was cold. Then I do what I was trained to do. Junho looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. They left the warehouse as dawn broke over Seattle. The city looked clean from a distance. Innocent, but Nina knew better. Monsters didn't just hide in the dark. Sometimes they raised you, taught you, loved you, and then they betrayed you with the patience of a hunting spider. The invitation came by courier. Handwritten on expensive paper. Min-sok's elegant script inviting Junho to a peace summit at the shipping docks. Neutral territory. To discuss ending the war with Sang-yong before more blood was spilled. Nina held the paper and felt malice radiating from it like heat. It's a trap, she said. They were in Junho's penthouse, glass and steel overlooking Elliott Bay. The kind of wealth that made Nina's 14 months of poverty feel like a fever dream. I know, Junho said. He stood at the window, hands in his pockets, looking at the city he ruled from the shadows. Then don't go. I have to. Nina moved to stand beside him. He'll kill you. That's the whole point. Probably. Then why? Because he's family. Junho's reflection in the glass looked tired. Because despite everything, I need to look him in the eye and hear him say it. That he hates me enough to destroy everything my father built. He paused, his hand tightening slightly in his pocket. My sister and my niece are already in Zurich. Safe. The uncle can't touch them now. I'm the only loose end left. Nina understood. She'd needed the same thing from her mother when she'd learned the truth about the aviary. Needed to hear the confirmation that she'd been sold. Commodified. Discarded. I'm coming with you, she said. No, that's not a request. Junho turned to her. They'll kill you too. The aviary will be there. Your mother. They want you back, Nina. Dead or alive. I know. Nina's voice was steady. But I'm tired of running. And you saved my life in that alley. I'm returning the favor. Why? The debt is paid. You've been my shadow for weeks. I could release you right now. Delete the file. Let you disappear. Nina had asked herself the same question. Why stay? Why risk everything for a man who'd blackmailed her, who'd unwittingly funded her torture? But the answer was simple and complicated. Because you're the first person who's looked at me and seen a monster and not flinched, she said quietly. Because when you're near me, the noise stops. Because she didn't finish, couldn't. Junho stepped closer. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Because we're the same, he finished for her. Two people too damaged to be anything but honest with each other. Yes. He leaned down. His lips brushed hers, soft and questioning. Nina froze for a heartbeat, then kissed him back. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. The kiss of two people who knew they were probably going to die and wanted to taste something real before the end. When they broke apart, Junho rested his forehead against hers. "If we survive this," he started. "We won't," Nina said. "If we survive this," he continued. "I want to know your real name. Not Subject 7. Not Nina Roberts. The name you had before they took it." Nina's throat tightened. "I don't remember it." "Then we'll make you a new one." The shipping yards at midnight looked like a graveyard for industry. Containers stacked like tombstones. Cranes looming against the sky. The Puget Sound lapped at the docks, the water black and infinite. Nina and Junho arrived in the Bentley. Just the two of them. Dylan had wanted to bring an army, but Junho had refused. Min-seok would expect a show of trust. They got out. Nina wore tactical gear under a long coat. Junho was in his suit, like armor. The meeting point was a clear space between containers. Lights had been set up, very theatrical. Min-seok stood in the center, flanked by 4 men Nina didn't recognize. Not Gyum Ryong, not Sang Yong, military bearing, government contractors. Her stomach sank. "Nephew," Min-seok greeted them. "Thank you for coming, Uncle." Junho's voice was cold. "Let's skip the pleasantries. What is this? This is the end of your father's legacy." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "My father was a rat." Min-seok's calm shattered. "He sold us out to the CIA for immunity, burned good men, destroyed families, all to save his own skin. That's not true." "It is." Min-seok's voice trembled with decades of rage. "I protected you from the truth. Raised you, taught you, hoping you'd be different. But you're his son, his blood, and blood doesn't change. You hate him for being a rat," Junho said, gesturing to Vance. "Yet here you are, Uncle, standing shoulder to shoulder with the federal government. You didn't purify the bloodline. You just changed handlers." More figures emerged from between the containers. Tactical gear, night vision, at least a dozen. Nina's hyper-empathy blazed. Intent to kill, intent to kill, intent to kill, and then she appeared. Director Vance, head of the aviary, late 50s, black, athletic. With Nina's eyes and Nina's bone structure and absolutely zero warmth. Nina's biological mother. "Subject 7, Vance said, her voice clinically detached. "It's time to come home." Nina felt like she'd been punched. "Home. The program needs you. We've refined the process, eliminated the breaking points. You could help train the next generation. You want me to help you torture children. I want you to serve your country." Junho moved slightly in front of Nina. A small thing, protective. Min-seok laughed. "Touching. The rat's son and the failed weapon. But this ends tonight." Junho's hand went to his waistband. Nina felt the collective tension spike. Every gun trained on them. "Don't," Nina said quietly, but Junho's expression was carved from stone. "I'm not dying on my knees. You don't have to die at all," Vance said. "Subject 7 comes with me. You walk away. Live your life. The syndicate dissolves. Everyone wins." "Except Nina," Junho said. "Nina doesn't exist. She's government property." Junho looked at Nina. In his eyes, she saw the question. She answered by drawing her weapon. The docks erupted. Gunfire split the night. Nina moved on instinct, muscle memory taking over. She grabbed Junho, pulled him behind a container as bullets sparked off steel. They ran. The docks were a maze. Containers stacked 3 high, creating corridors and dead ends. The tactical team pursued with professional precision. Nina felt them. 12 signatures, spreading out to cut off escape routes. "This way," she hissed, pulling Junho left. They entered a corridor between containers. Rain started falling. Of course it did. Seattle's perpetual blessing and curse. Nina's mind raced through scenarios. They were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. But she had advantages. She could feel them coming. "Stop," Nina whispered. They pressed against a container. Junho was breathing hard, weapon ready. Nina closed her eyes, extended her awareness. 4 signatures approaching from the front. 2 from behind. 6 more spreading wide to flank. "We're in a kill box," she said. "Options? We turn it into their kill box." The lights went out. All of them. The entire dock plunged into darkness so absolute Nina couldn't see her hand in front of her face. Someone had cut the power. Dylan. It had to be. He wouldn't have let them come alone despite orders. In the darkness, Nina's hyper-empathy blazed like a beacon. She could feel every hostile intent, every tactical formation, every heartbeat. "Junho," she whispered. "Give me your hand." He did. She laced her fingers through his. "I'm going to guide you. Trust me. Always." Nina pulled him forward. In the pitch black, moving through the container maze by feel alone. But she wasn't blind. She could sense the enemy positions like heat signatures. "Stop," she breathed. 3 steps forward. Angle left. "Fire at 10 o'clock. Low." Junho fired. A scream. Body hitting concrete. "Back up. 5 steps. Turn right." They moved like dancers. Nina's whispered coordinates. Junho's unwavering trust. In the darkness, they became a single organism. 9 o'clock. Knife. Close. Junho turned and fired. The attacker went down. But Nina's ammunition was limited. Junho was down to his last magazine. "We need to move," Nina said. They ran deeper into the maze. Rain poured down now, turning the ground slick. Nina's coat was soaked. Her braids hung heavy. They burst into an open area. Containers arranged in a circle. More tactical lights snapped on, blinding after the darkness. 6 men, weapons trained, and Director Vance standing at the center. "Enough," Vance called out. "Subject 7, this is over." Nina raised her weapon. Junho did the same. "I was never your subject," Nina said. "I was your daughter." For the first time, emotion flickered across Vance's face. "That was a long time ago, before you became useful. I was 7 years old. You were potential. You still are." Put down the weapon. Nina felt Junho's presence beside her. Solid. Unwavering. The only still point in the chaos. She thought about the girl she'd been. The name she couldn't remember. The mother who'd looked at her and seen a commodity instead of a child. And she thought about the man who'd blackmailed her into service, and then showed her that monsters could choose what they became. "No," Nina said. She fired. Not at Vance. At the tactical light above her. It exploded, plunging that section into darkness. Then Nina did what she'd been trained to do. She became the weapon. The first man died before he could process her movement. Nina's blade found his femoral artery with surgical precision, the kind they drilled into her through 10,000 repetitions until muscle memory made her faster than conscious thought. Blood sprayed hot against her hand. The man's shock and pain hit her empathy like a shockwave, but she pushed through it, already moving to the next target. The second turned toward the sound, the wet gasp of his partner dying, and she was already behind him, her arms snaked around his throat, leveraging her entire body weight. The snap of his vertebrae was distinct even over the rain. His fear vanished instantly, replaced by nothing. Empty air where a consciousness had been. The berserker state was different than normal combat. It was the place where her hyper-empathy merged with muscle memory, where Nina stopped thinking in words and just felt the micro-intentions before they became actions. The split-second decision to fire or dodge or strike. She moved through combat like water finding cracks in stone, flowing around obstacles before they fully formed. Junho fired in controlled 3-round bursts, covering her flanks. They worked in perfect synchronization. She felt when he needed to reload before he did, shifting her position to provide cover. He anticipated her movements with the kind of trust that came from seeing someone become exactly what they were meant to be. The third man swung his rifle like a club, trying to create distance. Nina dropped low, under the arc, and drove her palm up into his solar plexus. Ribs cracked. The air exploded from his lungs. Before he could recover, her elbow found his temple. The impact drove him sideways into a container wall. He slid down, unconscious or dead. Nina didn't check. The fourth pulled a knife, tactical blade that caught the light. Nina saw it coming before he fully gripped the handle, felt his intentions spike like lightning before the thunder. She caught his wrist mid-thrust, twisted until tendons tore, then redirected his own momentum. The blade he'd meant for her throat opened his instead. Arterial spray painted the rain-slick ground. The 5th and 6th tried to retreat. Tactical training overriding aggression. Smart, but not smart enough. Junho's bullets found them center mass, 3 rounds each, professional groupings that spoke of hours on the range. When the rain cleared and the smoke settled, 6 bodies lay in the mud, and Nina stood in the center, chest heaving, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Junho stared at her. Not with horror, with something else. Understanding, recognition. He'd just watched her become the monster completely. And he hadn't looked away. "Nina," he said quietly. She turned to him, blood dripping from her hands, rain washing it away slowly. "I know what you are now," Junho said. "What you can do, and I'm not afraid." Nina felt something crack inside her. Some last wall she'd been holding up. "You should be," she whispered. Junho closed the distance between them, cupped her bloodied face in his hands. "I've been afraid my whole life," he said. "Of becoming my father. Of being weak. Of caring about anyone. But with you, for the first time I'm afraid of the right things. Of losing you. Of not being strong enough to protect you. I don't need protecting. I know. That's why I love you." The words hung between them. Impossible. True. Nina kissed him, desperate, claiming. The rain poured down and the blood washed away, and for one perfect moment, they were just 2 people who'd found each other in the darkness. Then Vance's voice cut through the rain, touching. "But you're still surrounded." They broke apart. More tactical teams emerged from the shadows. At least 20. They were out of ammunition, out of options, but Nina felt something else. Another presence. Familiar. Min-seok stepped into the light, holding a detonator. "I rigged the gas main," he said calmly. "A gift from your father's old contacts. If I press this, 3 city blocks burn." Junho's expression went cold. "You'd kill hundreds of people just to destroy me? To purify the family?" "Yes." Vance smiled. "Clever. I'll take Subject 7. You can have your vendetta." Everything was falling apart. Nina felt the weight of impossible choices crushing down, and then she felt something else. Something she'd never felt before through her empathy. From Junho, a decision forming, absolute, final. "No," she said, knowing what he was planning, but Junho had already stepped forward. "I'll make you a deal," he said to Vance. "Take me instead." Vance tilted her head, studying Junho like he was an interesting specimen. "I don't need you. You need funding." Junho's voice was steady despite the rain and guns. "The aviary's black budget was cut 2 years ago. I've seen the reports. You're running on fumes. But I have access to offshore accounts worth $3 billion. Untraceable, completely liquid." Nina's blood ran cold. "Junho, don't." "All of it," he continued. "In exchange for Nina's freedom. Permanent. No surveillance, no tracking. She walks away and you never look for her again." Vance's expression shifted. "Interest. Calculation. $3 billion is a generous offer. But I don't make deals with criminals. You're standing in a shipping yard threatening to abduct a woman against her will while working with a man holding a bomb," Junho said dryly. "Let's not pretend either of us has moral high ground." Min-seok laughed. "Bold. Just like your father. Right before he sold us out." Junho ignored him. "Do we have a deal? Show me the accounts." Junho pulled out his phone, tapped through several screens, turned it to show Vance. Even from a distance, Nina could see the numbers. Multiple accounts. Switzerland, Cayman Islands, Singapore. Real money. Enough to rebuild the aviary 10 times over. Vance stepped closer, studying the phone. "Transfer codes? When Nina is safe." "She'll never be safe." Vance's eyes flicked to Nina. "She knows too much. The program's methods, the locations, the children we're currently training. The moment she's free, she becomes a liability." "Then have me killed," Nina said quietly. "After the transfer. Clean. Quick. That's what you want anyway. Nina, no. Junho started. It's the only way. Nina looked at him. At this man who'd blackmailed her into service and then fallen in love with her brokenness. You don't owe me anything. Take the deal. Live. Junho's expression was anguished. I can't. You can. You will. Nina turned to Vance. Do we have a deal? His money for my cooperation. No fighting. I come quietly. Vance studied her. Why the sudden surrender? Because I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. If I have to be a weapon, better to choose who wields me. It was a lie. Nina felt Vance's suspicion spike. But there was also greed. 3 billion could rebuild everything. Transfer the money first, Vance said. Junho hesitated. Nina nodded to him. Do it. He began the transfers. Nina watched the phone screen, watched her freedom drain away in increments of 100 million. When it was done, Vance checked her own device. Smiled. Confirmed. Pleasure doing business. She raised her gun, aimed at Nina. Wait. Junho moved, but 2 tactical operators grabbed him. You said cooperation. I said I'd take her quietly. I never said alive. Vance's finger tightened on the trigger. No loose ends. Nina felt the intention spike, felt the bullet coming, and she moved, not away, toward. She grabbed a weapon from one of the downed men, spun, and aimed it at Junho. Everyone froze. You're right, Mother, Nina said, her voice dead, Subject 7's voice. Empty of everything except clinical precision. He's just a job, just a means to an end. You taught me never to get attached to assets. Junho's expression shattered. Betrayal flooded his features. The kind of hurt that came from believing you'd found someone who understood you completely, only to discover it was performance. His gray eyes went from shocked to devastated to resigned in the space of a heartbeat. Nina felt his pain through her empathy like a blade to her chest, felt the exact moment his trust broke. But she kept her expression cold, empty, calculating. Let Vance see only what she expected, the weapon she'd created, finally choosing survival over sentiment. Good choice, Subject 7. Vance said, genuine pleasure warming her clinical tone. Kill him. Prove your loyalty to the program. Show me I didn't fail. You're exactly what you were designed to be. Nina's finger rested on the trigger. The Sig Sauer was steady in her 2-handed grip. She looked at Junho, at the man who'd blackmailed her into service, and then showed her that broken things could choose what they became. At the man who'd taken a bullet for her, who'd taught her how to manage crowds, who'd looked at her covered in blood and said he loved her. His eyes held hers, and in them, impossibly, she saw forgiveness, understanding. A trust so absolute, it made her want to weep. A tiny nod that said, Times, I know what you're doing. Asterisk. I'm sorry, Nina whispered. The only absolute truth in an ocean of deception. She fired. The bullet grazed Junho's ear. Close enough that the muzzle flash singed hair, that the supersonic crack made his head ring. He flinched instinctively, blood welling where the round had kissed skin, but it didn't hit him. The bullet traveled past his head at 1,200 feet per second and struck the gas canister directly behind Vance. The rupture was instantaneous. Pressurized propane meeting spark. The explosion bloomed like a flower made of fire and fury. The blast wave slammed everyone off their feet. The 2 tactical operators nearest the canister simply ceased to exist, vaporized in the initial fireball. Vance was thrown backward, weapon flying from her grip. In the chaos, the screaming, the fire, the smoke mixing with rain, Nina dropped her weapon and dove for Junho. Her hands found his jacket, hauling him to his feet. Run! She screamed over the roar of burning gas. They ran. Behind them, more gunfire cracked through the night. Vance shouting orders, her voice hoarse with fury and smoke inhalation. But the rain and smoke created cover, turning the docks into a labyrinth of shadows and muzzle flashes and chaos. Nina pulled Junho through the container maze with the certainty of someone who could navigate by feeling alone. Her empathy blazed white-hot, tracking every hostile intent pursuing them. 6 signatures to the east, 4 to the west, more coming from the south. But she felt something else too. Something familiar cutting through the hostile signatures like a knife through silk. Dylan and 6 Jiam Ryong men, coming hard from the north. She felt their determination, their loyalty, the iron will to extract their boss or die trying. This way. Nina pulled Junho left, then right, weaving through containers with the kind of precision that only came from seeing the battlefield in 4 dimensions. Space, time, intention, and probability. They burst out of the maze into an open loading area. Dylan's armored SUV screeched to a halt 20 feet away, side door flying open before the vehicle fully stopped, interior lights creating a beacon of safety in the darkness. "Get in!" Dylan shouted over the engine's roar. Nina and Junho dove inside, bodies tangling as they hit the leather seats. The door was still swinging when Dylan floored the accelerator. The SUV lurched forward with the power of an engine modified for exactly this kind of extraction. Gunfire pinged off the armored hull like deadly rain. Spiderweb cracks appeared in the rear window, bulletproof glass doing its job, holding despite impacts that would have shattered normal windows into deadly shrapnel. Nina looked back through the fractured glass, saw Vance standing in the rain and firelight, weapon raised, face twisted with the kind of rage that came from having victory stolen at the last possible second. Saw Min-sok with his detonator, screaming something Nina couldn't hear over the engine and gunfire. His face contorted with decades of hate finally given full expression. Then Dylan took a sharp turn, and they were gone, swallowed by Seattle's industrial labyrinth. Inside the SUV, Nina collapsed against the seat, breathing hard. Junho sat beside her, hand pressed to his bleeding ear. "You had me for a second," he said. "I really thought." "I know." Nina couldn't look at him. "I felt it. Your belief that I'd betrayed you. It almost killed me, but you needed her to believe it too." "Yes." Junho reached over, took her hand. Their fingers laced together, both slick with rain and blood. "We're not safe," Dylan said from the front. "They'll come after us, both of them." "I know," Junho said. "Which is why we're not stopping." Nina looked at him. "What do you mean?" Junho pulled out his phone, showed her a different screen. "Bank accounts, but not empty." "You transferred the money," Nina said, confused. "I transferred money. From accounts I control but don't own. Criminal assets seized from Sangyong. When the feds trace it in about 3 hours, they'll find it leads directly to my uncle's offshore holdings." Junho's smile was sharp. "The aviary just accepted $3 billion in stolen federal funds. Vance is going to prison, and your uncle will be connected to both the trafficking and the theft. The syndicate will tear itself apart fighting over succession." Junho leaned back. "I burned it all down. Everything my father built, everything I inherited. Why?" He looked at her. "Because you were right. Blood doesn't change. And I'm tired of being my father's son." Nina felt the truth of it, the finality. "Where do we go?" she asked quietly. "Anywhere. Everywhere." Junho squeezed her hand. "But first, I need you to do something for me." He pulled out a small device from his jacket. It was crude, wrapped in electrical tape, with a cracked circuit board visible at the center. "The receiver from the delivery bag," he said, running his thumb over the scorched plastic. "I found it in the alley debris. Half melted, but the frequency chip survived. I rewired it to trigger the charges at the docks. And I'm going to trigger it at the docks as soon as we're clear. Destroy all the Compound V7. Make sure it can never be used to make more weapons. They'll think we're dead," Nina realized. "Exactly." The SUV raced through Seattle's pre-dawn streets. Dylan drove in silence, following Junho's directions. Nina felt the weight of the choice, the freedom it offered, the death of their old identities. "Do it," she said. Junho's finger hovered over the trigger. "Together?" Nina put her hand over his. Together. They pressed down. Behind them, miles away now, the Seattle docks erupted in fire. The news called it the worst industrial accident in Seattle history. The explosion at the shipping docks killed 14 people, destroyed 3 warehouses, and caused damage estimated at $200 million. Investigators found traces of military-grade explosives mixed with natural gas, suggesting either terrorism or a catastrophic failure in criminal operations gone wrong. Among the dead, Junho Bae, alleged leader of the Gyeum Ryong syndicate, and an unidentified female companion. Their remains were too fragmented for traditional identification. Dental records were inconclusive. DNA testing found tissue from 17 different individuals mixed in the blast zone. 2 bodies, or maybe 3, incinerated beyond recognition. The Seattle Police Department closed the case after 6 weeks. No next of kin came forward to claim Junho Bae's remains. The unidentified woman remained Jane Doe number 7 inches, the forensic database. Director Melissa Vance was arrested 3 days after the explosion. The FBI had been investigating financial irregularities in a classified program when an anonymous tip led them to $3 billion in stolen federal funds, hidden assets embezzled by the Sang-Young family, transferred to offshore accounts registered to the aviary. The scandal reached the Pentagon. Congressional hearings, leaked documents, photos of children who'd been part of the program. The aviary was officially terminated. Again. This time with criminal charges. Vance was awaiting trial in a federal facility, facing life imprisonment. The government had classified everything related to her program, but enough leaked that investigative journalists were piecing together the story. Children taken, experimented on, turned into weapons. Subject 7 was mentioned in the leaked files. Real name redacted, status, deceased. Lost in the Seattle docks explosion while attempting to apprehend her for questioning related to federal crimes. Case closed. Min Sok Bae disappeared 2 days after the explosion. Some said he'd fled to South Korea, that he had family in Busan who would hide him. Others claimed he'd been killed by Gyeum Ryong loyalists, who blamed him for the Dragonhead's death. A body matching his description washed up in Elliott Bay 4 weeks later. But DNA testing was inconclusive. The truth died with him. The Gyeum Ryong syndicate dissolved in the aftermath. Internal fighting, succession wars, federal investigations that had been waiting for an opening finally moved in. Assets were seized, lieutenants arrested or killed. The empire Junho's father had built crumbled in less than 3 months. But something unexpected emerged from the ashes. A legitimate business, Gyeum Ryong Holdings, LLC. Led by the former lieutenant who'd always advocated for going legal. They transformed the syndicate's remaining assets into import, export companies, real estate development, technology ventures, money laundering, the cynics said. But the company paid taxes, filed proper paperwork, employed thousands of people in legitimate jobs. It wasn't perfect, probably still had connections to criminal elements, but it was better than what it had been. Some good came from the ashes after all. 6 months later, the Greek island of Santorini existed in postcards and dreams. White buildings with blue domes cascading down volcanic cliffs like frozen waterfalls. The Aegean Sea stretched to the horizon in shades of blue so intense they seemed artificial. Cruise ships dotted the caldera. Tourists clogged the narrow streets of Oya, taking photos of the same sunset millions of people had photographed before them. But the quiet villa on the northern coast, away from the tourist centers, accessible only by a private road that wound through vineyards, remained invisible to the masses. Elena now, she had to remember, sat on the terrace overlooking the sea, morning sun warm on her shoulders. The air smelled like salt and wild herbs and bread baking in the village bakery a kilometer away. She was eating breakfast, real breakfast, not protein bars consumed standing in a dingy apartment, always ready to run, not cold pizza from the night before, actual breakfast at an actual table while wearing actual clothes that weren't tactical gear. Greek yogurt, thick and tangy, mixed with local honey that tasted like wildflowers and sunshine. Bread still warm from the bakery, crusted with sesame seeds. Olives cured by the old woman who owned the vineyard. Coffee that had been brewed properly, in a briquet over flame, creating a foam so perfect it was almost sinful. Elena wore a simple sundress, white cotton that moved in the breeze. Her box braids were down today, a few silver cuffs catching the morning light. She'd added more beads over the past months, blue glass, tiny shells, decorative instead of tactical. Her feet were bare. She couldn't remember the last time before Santorini that she'd gone barefoot outside. Always boots, always ready to run, always prepared for violence. Footsteps behind her, measured, unhurried. Elena didn't turn. She'd felt him approaching before he left the bedroom. His emotional signature was as familiar now as her own heartbeat, that stillness she'd learned to use as an anchor, the calm center in any storm. Junho, David now, legally, though she still thought of him by his real name in private, emerged from the villa wearing loose linen pants and nothing else. His chest was bare, the dragon tattoo visible in the sunlight, every scale and flame rendered in exquisite detail across his left side. And the scar, her scar, the one she'd given him 5 years ago in a parking garage when she'd chosen mercy over mission completion. He looked peaceful, relaxed in a way she'd never seen during their time in Seattle. No suits, no weapons visible. His hair was slightly longer, touching his collar, no longer styled with expensive product. He had a tan, actual sun-kissed brown instead of the pale complexion of someone who lived at night. He looked happy. "Sleep well?" Elena asked, stealing a piece of his bread. "Better than I have in years." He sat across from her at the small table, stealing a piece of her bread in retaliation. "No nightmares. Or at least, none that I remembered when I woke up." "No crowds," Elena said. The villa's isolation was intentional. Their nearest neighbor was the Vineyard family, a kilometer away. The village was small, maybe 300 people, and half of them were elderly locals who'd been born in the same houses their grandparents had died in. No empathy overload. I can actually function like a normal human. They'd bought the villa with cash. Clean money this time, routed through so many accounts and shell companies that even a forensic accountant would get lost in the maze. Dylan had helped them disappear properly. New identities, new documentation. A paper trail that showed David Kim and Sarah Park, siblings who'd inherited money from a distant relative, buying a retirement property in Greece. Boring, forgettable, exactly what they needed. "Do you miss it?" Elena asked, watching his face. "The power, the empire, the fear in people's eyes when you walked into a room." Junho considered the question seriously. He always did, never gave her easy answers or comfortable lies. "Sometimes," he admitted. There was a simplicity to it, a clarity. I knew who I was, what was expected of me. He looked out at the sea, at the fishing boats heading out for the morning catch. But then I remember what it cost. The isolation, the paranoia, looking at everyone and wondering who would betray me first, becoming the kind of man who could order executions and feel nothing. His gray eyes found hers. "This is better. Eating breakfast with you." He reached across the table, his fingers finding hers. "Waking up without checking for assassins, going to sleep without calculating who might move against me overnight. Being David Kim, who owns a small villa and helps the old man at the vineyard harvest grapes, instead of Junho Bae, who people feared and hated in equal measure." Elena squeezed his hand. She understood. She'd traded Subject 7, the weapon, the asset, the thing that felt too much and broke under the weight of it, for Elena, a woman who could walk through the village market without her empathy screaming, who could sit in the local taverna and feel only the normal background noise of human emotions instead of overwhelming cacophony, a woman who was learning what normal felt like. "I've been thinking," Elena said, "about us, about this." She gestured to the villa, the sea, the life they'd built from the ashes of who they'd been. "It feels temporary, like we're in hiding instead of actually living." "We are in hiding," Junho pointed out reasonably. "I know, but I don't want it to feel that way." Elena pulled her hand back, needing the space to articulate what she was trying to say. "I want to build something real here. Not just survive, actually live. Plant a garden, learn Greek properly instead of just tourist phrases. Make friends with the neighbors instead of keeping them at tactical distance. That requires staying in one place. I know. Putting down roots. Yes. Becoming findable if anyone is still looking." Elena met his eyes. "Are they? Still looking?" Junho was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone. The emergency one, encrypted, that they checked once a week for news from their old lives. He navigated to a saved article, turned it to show her. The headline: Former Director of Classified Programs sentenced to life without parole. Below it, a photo of Vance being led into a federal courthouse. Orange jumpsuit. Handcuffs. The woman who'd sold her own daughter looked small, diminished, utterly defeated. The aviary is done, Junho said. Vance is in prison. Most of her staff took plea deals and are testifying against her. The program's files have been sealed and buried so deep it would take an act of Congress to access them. Subject 7 is officially dead, killed in the Seattle explosion. He put the phone away. No one is looking for you? No one is looking for me. We're ghosts. Free ghosts, Elena corrected. Free ghosts, he agreed. A phone buzzed inside the villa. Their other emergency line. The one only Dylan had. They both tensed automatically. Old habits that would probably never fully die. Junho went to get it. Came back with the phone and a slight frown. Dylan, he said. Wants to know if we saw the news. What news? He pulled up a Korean news site on his regular phone, turned it to show her. The headline: Gumryong Syndicate dissolves. New leadership forms legitimate business holdings. Below it was a photo. The young lieutenant who'd always argued for legitimacy signing papers at a press conference. Behind him, logos for import companies, tech startups, real estate development firms. Gumryong Holdings LLC. Huh, Elena said. Maybe some good came from it after all. From everything we did. Everything we destroyed. Maybe. Junho sat back down, but his expression was distant, thoughtful. My father built that empire on blood and fear and corruption. I inherited it and maintained it the same way. But now, maybe it becomes something better. Something that employs people and pays taxes and doesn't leave bodies in its wake. Is that redemption? Elena asked quietly. I don't know, but it's something. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sea, watching fishing boats return with their catch, watching the world continue without them. I've been thinking, Elena said finally, about names, about identity. Junho looked at her with interest. Yeah? Sarah Park is fine for a passport and bank accounts, but I want a real name, the one I choose for myself. Not Subject 7, not the random name I picked from a phone book, a name that means something. What do you want to be called? Elena thought about it, about the girl she'd been, whose real name had been erased when they took her at 7, about the weapon she'd become, designated by a number instead of humanity, about the woman she was learning to be, someone who could feel the full spectrum of human emotion without drowning in it. Elena, she said. It means light, brightness, the thing you walk toward when you've been in darkness too long. Junho tested the name, let it sit on his tongue. Elena. He smiled, and it transformed his face from handsome to beautiful. It suits you. Elena Kim? Elena Park Kim, she corrected. If we're going to be siblings on paper, might as well share the name properly. Elena Park Kim, he repeated, then softer. And if we ever stop being siblings on paper, what then? Elena felt heat rise in her chest. They'd been careful since arriving in Santorini, sleeping in separate rooms, maintaining the fiction of family, not pushing into territory that would complicate their carefully constructed new identities. But the attraction had never died, the connection that had formed in blood and fear and desperate trust. It was still there, growing stronger with every sunrise they watched together, every meal they shared. Every night she felt his presence in the villa and felt safe instead of hunted. Then we figure it out, she said quietly. Together. The way we've figured out everything else. Junho reached under the table. Elena felt his intention before she saw the movement. Not threat, never threat from him, just presence, connection. His hand found hers, their fingers laced together, familiar and right. On the table between them, invisible to any hypothetical observer, they both had pistols taped to the underside of the furniture, old habits that would probably never fully die. The Glock she'd carried since Seattle. The SIG he'd salvaged from the docks. They were free. But they were still who they'd been. Still weapons pretending to be human. Still monsters learning how to be people. "Elena," Junho said again, like he was testing how the name felt in his mouth. "Like a prayer or a promise or both. What do you want to do today?" "I don't know." Elena looked out at the water, at the horizon where sea met sky in a line so perfect it looked drawn. At the vast, open future that stretched before them for the first time in their lives. "Something normal. Define normal," he said with a smile. "I have absolutely no idea." And they laughed. It felt strange. Foreign. Good. The delivery was finally complete. The package that had started everything in a rain-slicked Seattle alley, the bomb meant to kill Junho that had instead saved them both, had reached its destination. The girl who'd carried bombs and secrets and trauma was gone. The dragonhead who'd ruled through fear and calculation was gone. What remained were two people who'd found each other in the darkest places and chosen, against all odds and logic, to walk toward the light, together. The sun rose higher over Santorini. The Aegean sparkled like diamonds scattered across blue velvet, and two former monsters ate breakfast on a terrace overlooking paradise, holding hands under a table where weapons waited, just in case. But for now, for today, they were free, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything.